Welcome to another episode of Live Coding with Rabbitwerks JavaScript. Welcome back, Coding Rabbits. Today is episode 2 of the, where the heck are we? FullStack Authentication from Scratch project featuring JSON Web Tokens and all that good stuff. So where we left off last week was basically we got our authentication route set up. Let's just look through this really quick. So we have our app.js. It's just got a basic Express app going, and we have our auth route. And if we take a look at that. Alright, so if we take a look at that, we got 2 routes right now, just some basic boiler stuff to get started. We're bringing in our database, and we have a register route, and we have a login route. So this isn't really doing us much good right now because we are not just sending back a string saying welcome to the register route. Oh, I gotta adjust my stuff. Everything's all screwed up. I don't know why it's going, that's like not the right input. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Check. How's that? Does that sound better? OBS software is just a pain, dude. Like, so much. I was on the wrong input. Is it sounding decent now, at least? Okay, cool. Alright, we're back. Alright. So, if you couldn't hear anything, welcome to Live Coding with Rabbitwerks JavaScript. My name is Sean. We're working on FullStack authentication and authorization from scratch. And basically, this is where we left off last week. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to start writing out the register route to use post request to register a new user to our database, essentially. So there's a couple things we need to do in order to get that working. We need to bring in a couple packages. We're going to be bringing in Joi, which is a validation package. We're going to use it for validation, at least. You can use it for other things as well, but we're going to use Joi for validation, and then we're also going to be bringing in Bcrypt to hash our passwords as well. And then we're going to take all that good stuff and push it up to the database. Yeah, and depending on where we're at with time, I think that might be all we're gonna have time for. But we'll just we'll get started here in just a second and see how far we get. All right. All right, excellent. So, what do we need to do? Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is let's just start by writing out the initial route, I guess we can say it. So it's gonna be a post request. So we'll say, remember we're using the router in Express in order to build out these like sub levels or sub routes and stuff like that for our application. So we're going to say router.post, and it's going to be to the master route, just like that. Again, it's going to get our rec and res objects. Fallback. Cool. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do is, I guess we should probably open up Postman. Let's see, we'll get that rolling. So, you weren't in stream last week. Basically, we talked about Postman for working on your API development and stuff. API development. Hope that's not too washed out. Looks like it's alright. Okay, cool. So what we want to do is we're just going to type in our backend. Let's see. So if we're going to do this from a news thing, we'll just do request. Close all of these out just to get a. Want to save it. Don't save. Okay. So we're just going to make a new request here in Postman, and it's going to be a post request. And so right here, we'll enter the URL. And make sure that we get our development servers up and running, but let's just type this out. Oops. Localhost, and then we used port 1337 for the back end. And then we want to do auth. So we're targeting the auth route. Basically, the address that we want to ping is what we're typing in here. So we will just say register. Well, it's the same thing as if we were going to go to this right here in our application. So, before we go any further, let's get these spun up. So cd into the server. We just need to be in the server right now, so we'll just stay in there. VM undev. All we need to do. Nodemon. Wait. Happened to Nodemon. Let's take a look at our package. Run dev. Heck. I wonder if we can just Nodemon get it got removed? Weird. Very weird. I'm not sure why Nodemon got removed from our package, but let's bring it in, I guess. Okay, so npm I Nodemon. Really strange. I wonder why that got. Bear with me just a second. I'm just doing a little bit of a. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. Is this the wrong folder? This should be the same one. I had to update the branch names. So this is how I. Can take a look on GitHub really quick.
I'll get straight to the point. I found marijuana in the house. And while I never thought of myself as the type of father who'd have to drug test his kids, I'm willing to do just that if that's what it takes to find out who brought a joint into this house.
Dad, Lucy found something too.
Dad, I found a joint in Mom's dresser drawer.
Okay, so this was this. Let's take a look. Okay, so I think I screwed something up when I was renaming things. Let's figure it out. It was just. I think it was just that package though. I don't know. None of them have it in there. I don't understand. Very weird. Yeah, but okay, so it is a different branch, but that's because I went through and just renamed it because I realized that I named this DB connection branch 3 instead of branch 2. And then I just pushed these different branches to Git. Let's see. Server files, root routes, add auth route, package. I think that's the only thing that's missing though, even if I did screw this up. Because all the code is still completely relevant. It's still correct. I just don't really know how that got goofed up, but I guess that's what happens when you rush. So make sure you know what you're typing. Okay, Joshua in the chat was saying Nodemon should be installed with a -D flag. So let's just do that really quick and then we'll move on to what we were doing. It's not taking so much time on this. Alright, so let's go in here. -D. What's the difference, or why does it? What's the -d flag do? Dev dependencies. Okay. Let's try this now. Nodemon. There we go. Alright. Tune in next week for the actual stream. I'm just kidding. Okay. Let's see. Where are we at? Okay, now that we got our app running, we can get targeting this stuff again. So all we did was brought in Nodemon to use that to watch files for changes, and it restarts the server for us. So back in our authentication route. Well, okay, so Joshua was saying it makes a dev dependency since it isn't needed in production. But when I did it last week, when I did it, you guys were saying that I need to install it as a dependency and not do --save and just do -d, like you were saying today. So where's the difference, or what's the difference? I'm missing the disconnect, or I'm not seeing the thing there. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so in Postman, if we want to target this route, let's just write a just do a simple get request to see what we get in response. Oh, welcome to the register route. Okay, so it's up and working properly. Actually, you know what we want to do before we start on this? We want to bring in one more package for monitoring the incoming and outgoing requests, just to kind of, in our terminal, just to kind of make our life easier. Stop our server, and that package is called Volleyball, or you can use Morgan too. They're kind of the same, one and the same, but we'll use Volleyball. And get up here. Small Express HTTP logger for debugging asynchronous requests and responses. So pretty straightforward. We're just going to use the basic use of it, so we'll just bring it in using npm install volleyball. Can this be a friggin'? Can this be a dev dependency as well? Gotcha. So Joshua in the chat was saying, so npm I package, the name of the package, --save is equivalent to npm install package as of the latest versions. npm I install package -uppercase-d makes it a dev one. Gotcha. Sense. Okay, cool. All right, so let's bring volleyball in. I just want to check really quick and make sure we everything in this one. Let's see. Whatever. npm I volleyball, and then we'll do -d. Oh, I guess this is a regular one. I'm always struggle with knowing if I need it production or not. Well, it's tricky because like we don't have a build process for our backend, so it's not going to. Is it even going to like take the dev dependencies and take them away for like a build during a build process? That doesn't happen. I'm confused. When writing these Node.js applications and stuff, do the dev dependencies get removed from the final package in a way, or is there a process that we can do to do that? Like a build process or whatever. Alright, so we have volleyball in here now. Now, we're going to go back to app.js because this is going to be, we're going to run this middleware on everything. So, up at the top here, we'll bring volleyball in. So we'll say const volleyball equals require volleyball. That. And then right underneath our app invocation right there, we will just apply that middleware. So we'll do app.use and let's pass in volleyball. Now, if that works and we make an HTTP request to our server when this is running, don't look at that. Oh, not that. Oh, goodness. Sorry. npm run dev. Alright, so it's running. Let's try and make a request to it and just see what it gives us really quick. Make sure that volleyball is in fact working. Alright, cool. So as you see down here, we have outgoing or incoming, and then the response is outgoing. So incoming is a GET request to add to auth/register, and it's going to send a 200 status code of OK back as a response. So it's working. Cool. Now that we have that going, we're going to switch back focus into writing our register post route. So now that we have this in here, we want to get a scheme going for our character for our users. And for right now, we'll just be using the body area to write in our essentially our JSON to be sent to as a request inside of Postman. So this just accepts JSON in here and to be sent, as rec.body. Essentially, that's what it's going to be passed in as. All right, so. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to want to validate our incoming requests. We want to validate the user credentials that are being sent in. So for right now, we'll just let's open up an object. I'll just start this off just to begin with. We'll do name. Probably copy something else so it's not like pasting my stream key in there. Oh my gosh. Sean. Let's write out some basic JSON right now. Test at test.net. Now there should be a validate. Oh, I gotta switch this to JSON, right? There we go. Okay, cool. Beautify it. Okay, so we just got some basic stuff. That's not going to be all that we accept, obviously, but I just want to kind of get that in there so we can send it and see what happens. So if we send that over and make sure we switch this to a post request, Postman, send that over, and it looks like, okay, so it's getting it, and it's obviously it's not, we don't have anything back yet, so it's not going to complete the request. So let's do that really quick. Let's just say, just to get something back, let's just say res.send, and we will send the rec.body. so that should give us this body back if that works correctly. So let's push send here and see what happens. We got an okay. I mean, I think I have to run res.json actually. Send. Rec.body. Rec. Request. Whoa. Oh yeah, Joshua reminded me that I always, every time I'm writing these apps, I always forget about the body parser that we need to bring in. But before we do that, so body parser allows Express to take the rec.body essentially and be able to read it. It parses it and pulls it, converts it to JSON or whatever. So we're able to view it. So Express has a function inside of it specifically for using, or specifically for doing that. And okay, so to be able to use the body parser or whatever, it's not exactly that per se, but we're let's see. So if we, let me pull up the package. Express, and it's express.json is the function that we want. Okay, so let's see if you can get that. Express.json. This is a built-in middleware function in Express. It parses incoming requests with JSON payloads and is based on body parser. So this is what we need in order to be able to open up the rec.body and parse it into JSON. Otherwise, it's just going to give me these errors that are coming through right now. So in order to use that, we're just like this app.use volleyball here. We're gonna say app.use since it's a middleware, and we'll say express.json and make sure to invoke the function. Just like that. This should be all that we need to do to get Express's body parser up and going now. Alright, so let's click ascend on that and see what happens. Oh yeah, I commented this out, my bad. Rec.body. Okay, cool. There it is. Okay, so we got it back. We're getting our name and our email. So we're getting it back. Awesome. That's what we want. So okay, so now we need to do some validation. So this is when we're gonna bring in Joi. So I'll pull up the package for that as well, so we can do that. And it's under the conglomerate Happy. They have a number of different packages out, but we're going to be using their Joi package. So Happy Joi is the most powerful schema, description language, and data validator for JavaScript. Joi lets you describe your data using a simple, intuitive, and readable language like the rest of the Happy ecosystem it fits in. Joi allows you to describe the data for both input and output validations as part of a Happy HTTP server or standalone. So we just have an example here. Yeah, so we'll basically pretty much take a lot of this verbatim. We don't need some of these more advanced validations for our use cases. It's access token, key password. Or any of these like options. I don't think we'll do that. But okay, so let's just bring in the package to begin with. So we bring it in by saying npm, let's do it secondary terminal, npm, and it's kind of like installing the Vue CLIs or packages that you want to get the most current at version of. So at happy/joy, I'll pull down that package. Pretty straightforward. All right. Oh, God damn it! Need to uninstall that. I'm in the wrong directory. Install happy/. It's not having the best luck tonight. Okay, cd server. Let's go and installed there. What are you gonna do? All right. Happy is in there now. Okay, so now we can bring Happy in. Inside of our index.js for our auth route still, we're gonna bring Happy in. We can do that. We'll say const Joi equals happy. That. All right. So now what we want to do is we need to write a schema, and basically a schema is like a model, a data model that we want to use to verify against. So we'll take incoming requests that have the user object that they want to register, and we're going to verify all the parameters, all the name and email, all that good stuff. We're going to make sure that it valid info being sent in those fields using Joi, and then if that is valid, then we will do something with it, and if it's not valid, then we will reject it. All right, so pretty straightforward. But so we want to make a schema, and so we'll call it const register schema, and I'm calling it register schema because we'll have a login schema as well, but it won't need all of the fields that we're going to use for this right now. So right, register schema equals joi.object. I don't write this out, I just pretty much copied it from their schema, their basic boilerplate schema here, so you can do that as well. So basically what we have is it's creating a Joi object. So let's just copied it in there because it's a lot of the same code over and over again. So it's creating an object and it's setting keys, right? So we have a first name, a last name, a username, a password, user class, and email. And for each of those keys, the value is going to have to pass a certain validation. So it's going to, for example, first name is going to have to be a string, it's going to have to be alphanumeric only. It's have to have a minimum length and a maximum length, and it is required. So if you look at down here, like the password one, it's a little bit different. It's got a regex that it tests the input against to make sure that it has the characters that you want for password. And if we look after that is the email one, so that's looking at a string, and it's looking to make sure that it's an email and it has a minimum. We're passing in an options object, a basic options object that comes standard with this or whatever, and the minimum domain segments. You can also set the top level domains to accept, so like .com and .net, like you say here, but we won't have to worry about that for our example. So we have a register schema going now. That's cool. What do we need to do next? Okay, so first thing we want to do is we're going to take the result of, or well, not our result, but we're going to take our rec.body and we're going to validate it against the register schema. So in order to do that, we can get rid of this res.json. So we'll say const result equals, and we'll say Joi.validate. Joi.validate is a function that comes in Joi, and it takes two parameters. It takes the it can take three parameters, options, object, or whatever is the third. But first parameter is going to be the value that we're passing in, the one that we want to test. And then the second parameter is the schema we're going to pass into it, what we want to test against. And then the third parameter could be like options objects, but we won't need any special options. We're just going to test that the rec.body matches the registration schema. Simple as that. So we'll say rec.body. That's the first parameter here, and then the second one, register schema. Just need to pass it in just like that. Right. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is let's just console log the results and see what that gives us. Now that we have that, let's head over to Postman and make this request, and we will be rejected because obviously we don't even have half of the fields that we need. So let's just see what happens. All right, boom. Joi.validate is not. Well, that's what happened. Function. That's correct. That's all correct. Correct. Validated. Or if it's like an async thing. Hold on a second. Sync. Let's try that. Alright, res.json result. Well, that's not pulling through. Oh, they updated their usage. I see. Well, does that mean that my other apps are all broken now? So we need to do const result equals. So instead of this, apparently it's not that syntax anymore. We're gonna say const result. Let's get rid of the async keywords. We don't. What we need to do is const result equals register schema dot validate, and then we pass in the rec.body. Alright, let's see what that gives us now. There we go. Okay, so apparently they updated their syntax, my bad. Must be a new version. I'll check and see what difference. Okay, cool. So we got that. So const result equals register schema.validate, and then we're passing in rec.body, and you can see that it's giving us some issues here. So first name is required. Obviously, it's giving us value error. All that good stuff. So let's make sure that this matches now. So let's update our schema, or not our schema, but our mock data in Postman to make sure that it passes now. What's the rest of stuff? Where's my parameter stuff? Damn it. Gosh. Can't things just go smoothly for me once? Once. That's all I ask. One time. Just go smoothly. Why does everything have to get all screwed up all the time? Where the heck is it? I don't get it. Whatever, I'll just make a new tab, I guess. There. All I want is this right here. That's all I want. Alright, let's mock some data. So we got an object, right? And it's going to have a first name. Last. It's not. Oh, and it's on insert. Cool. Always love typing on insert mode. Alright, next one we got is our class. This one we'll have its password. And we finally will have mail. Doesn't really matter what the order is, to be honest, but just following what it says here. Okay, so now let's make these actual objects. So we'll just Sean rabbitwerks. Oh wait, we can't. That's not gonna be a valid username because we're not allowing symbols. Oh, rabbitwerks. Yes, it is. Get in commas. Should write out the JSON the proper way, but I'm just trying to get it done. User class is a view person. But either. I'll have to add those in. We could add those in, just do a regex or whatever, but whatever. Not weird about it. Password is test1234. Best password ever. Test. .net. Okay. Oops. Validate. I thought there was a validate on button. think it just yells at you. Okay, let's send that over and see what happens now. Okay. So send. Boom. What do we got? It's only characters. Oh, there's a space. Or user class, my bad. We can't have a space here. So it's working. All right, cool. Look at that. Oh, that's nice. So you can see that it returns just an object with value. And that is the validated, everything is good to go, and value. So it might be a little bit different on how I have things written down in the prototype, because we were checking to see if there's a result.error, but it doesn't look like there's going to be result or an error field at all if there's if it's a valid schema. Okay, so that being said, let's go about this. We can eat this now that we know that it's validating it and it's working. Let's check. So make sure that if there isn't any errors on our validation, we want to query the user collection to make sure that that user base or username isn't already taken. All right, so in order to do that, first we want to just make sure we're going to test the result to make sure it's valid. So if, probably go like if not result dot, because it doesn't even give us that at all. Because before, what it was saying, even if it was valid, we would still have a an error object or whatever, but it would just contain, it would just be value of null. So we would check right here, so everybody thinks I'm not, knows I'm not crazy. Right here, if result.error equals null, we can do users.find, but we can't go like that anymore because we don't get a result.error equal object if we have a valid schema. So we have to go about it a little bit. So we'll try if not result.error, then .json result. Let's see if that works now. Send through. Looks like it works. Else, so obviously else there would be an error, so we'll just say console.json result. Try that. All right, so now heck happened. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. I see what happened. It just is so big that I was just like, come on. That's kind of silly. On this one now, because this has our new updated schema validation info. Okay. So let me just put a space here because that'll throw an error because it's not valid, and see what happens here. So we just get the error object. So cool. That's awesome. I like that. We'll have to do some nice error handling with that when we get down to it. But for now, we'll just have that as, we'll just send the error back or whatever. But say we don't have any errors and our schema is, or our valid, or this is our info. We get a value object back that contains all of our parameters. Cool. Well, now we need to check and see if that data or that user exists in the database. To do so, use our monk package. So rid of this. We don't need that anymore at the moment. We'll say for now we are going to target users. So remember we brought a connection to the DB in. and then we're targeting the users collection. Just a second. Be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Where were we? All right, so like I was saying, we're bringing in our connection to the database. We're targeting and opening up the users collection of that database. Now, if we remember, if we were gonna pull up our database GUI, viewer, all that good stuff, Robo T3 or 3T. I know you guys can't see this very well, but this one, 5.1. So we have our collections, and then we have a users collection. Right now, it doesn't have anything in there, so let's just keep that in mind right now. So down here in our post route, or our register route, what we need to do is okay. We need to query the database to make sure that that username doesn't exist. So we can do that by saying users.findOne. Find1 is a monk function that will search for a given, let's see, it's going to search for a given property of an object and return if it's found it or not, or if it finds it or not, return. Pull it up actually. Let's look at called monk. Look at the documentation. Alright, so monk, where is it? Find one right here. Okay, so collection.findOne. So in our case, it's going to be users.findOne. Returns one document that satisfies the specified query criteria. If multiple documents satisfy the query, the method returns the first document according to the natural order, which reflects the order of documents on the disk. Basically, it's going to return the first thing it finds first. So that's all you need to really know on this case. It is a promise, so we have a we'll have a callback function that has a dot then and a dot catch. We'll handle the dot catch will be handled with we'll be using that Express's next function to forward it onto the error handler. Okay, let's do it. So users.find1, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass in an object, and then in this object we're searching for the username, right? So username is the property, and that is rec.body.username, just like that, right? Cool. So since this is going to be returning an object, what we need to do then is check to see what we get returned. So what we'll say is dot then, chain on a dot then, and then we'll pass in what we want to get back is if we do get something back, we want to get a user object back, right? So we'll pass that in. That'll be an arrow function, right? So with this, we can say, so if user does not equal null, let's just see what user returns before we write a statement. So we'll say console.log, see what that gives us. So let's send our data off. Okay, so right here, it's not going to complete the request on Postman's end because we don't have the res.json anymore at the moment. So right here, we have this, it's returning null. So what do we want to do? So if it returns null, that means that that user name, that property, what we're searching for, doesn't exist in our database. So it's a good thing. That means we can register a username under that name. But if there is a username already registered, we need to let the current user know that, and basically throw an error and move on, and not let them register the same user. So in order to do that, we need to write our if statement now. So we'll say if user, we need to do does not equal null, because if no user, then it won't work because of the way that JavaScript is weird sometimes. So if user does not equal null, then we need to well, we can say console log. Actually, we don't console log. We're just going to, well, since we don't have a front end right now, or we don't have this error handling, I'm gonna write a console log in tandem with a new error with an error, and we'll go through after the fact, refactor, clean up the console logs, and turn those into proper errors and stuff like that. So, or instead of console logging, we'll send it to like, we'll just clean up the console logs anyway. I just want to be able to see kind of what's going on the back end at the same time. So console.log, and we'll say user name has been, say name already exists. Please choose. Cool. Just like that. And next thing I want to do is we're just gonna throw a new error. So we'll say const error equals error, and we'll pass in the string that we want the error message to contain, right? It's like that. So now we have an error being thrown, and we just need to send it back to our error handler in our top level app.js, which we don't have written yet, but we will write that. But we need to get it up to our app.js regardless. So when we come into errors and we come into issues and we need to move from one route to the next route because something didn't work right or something didn't match up and it's not the right thing and we need to move on to the next thing, well, Express has a function for moving on to the next, essentially next route request or whatever, next route. Vaguely enough, it's called next. So you'll probably see this. It's kind of tricky when I was getting up and running with Express, figuring this out. So when basically we have our callback on all of our routes, right? We have our callback function. So we have two parameters that we above all need. We have our request object and our response object. So when we have three parameters, typically, so the next one we want to put in is next, and that's a function that takes the route that we're in, the route that we're in takes the request and moves it to the next route, essentially, whatever we need to do. So with Express, when there are three parameters being passed into the callback of a route function, then the third parameter is automatically going to be the next. And if we have four parameters being passed in, that's when we get this additional error parameter at the front of everything. So we have all that stuff. You can see that usually you won't have to do this because we're just using next to pass it to an error handler, but just know that when there's four parameters, the first parameter of the function is going to be the error object, second one will be the request, third response, and then the fourth is finally next. When there's only three, it's just going to be rec, res, and next. So that's pretty much what you'll see pretty commonly. And then all the errors that happen will be handled with the next function and just be passed to an error handler in our app.js top level route or app code and all that stuff. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of confusing. Really what you just need to do is just start writing Express apps and you'll start to understand what's going on. You won't really, I think the only time we'll ever use the fourth parameter, that error, is when we have our error handler route or function that middleware that we'll write in a little while or whatever. So long story short, long-winded as heck. Whew, out the window. Okay, so now that we have that covered, we need to just pass our error into next. So it's like this. Pass that in like that. Alright, so that is what happens if our user is not equal to null, basically that our user exists. So now what happens if username doesn't exist and we can take it? Well, what we need to do now is insert that user into the database. But before we can do that, there's one thing that we have to do that's uber important, is that right now you can see that we have our password. Right here is clear text. No. Anything you take away from this series, this tutorial, live coding series, if anything at all, this is probably the number one most important part of this whole thing to get right. And if not, you're just giving people's passwords away. What we're going to be doing is hashing our passwords. So hashing a password is a common practice. Basically, it takes a clear text, human readable string and garbles it all up and hashes it essentially into a really secure, uncrackable, 64, depending on how long you set it for. Like, I think it's a 64-digit passphrase that's just like a string of random letters and characters. Can't guess it. Like, hashing passwords, that's how you can keep passwords secure in databases and stuff like that. You never want to store the actual passwords. Always want to store the hashes of the passwords. Never the passwords, always the hashes. So super important, very, very important. So what are we going to do that? Okay, so it's not that complicated. What we actually need to do is we're going to bring in one more package this evening. It's called Bcrypt. Bcrypt is specifically used for hashing. It's probably one of the best packages out there right now for you hashing passwords in Node.js applications. So we're going to bring that in. Okay, so room with all these monitors running. Alright, so let's so this is kind of tricky. Well, not really. We're gonna bring home and check out npm one more time. npm. Okay, so this is kind of confusing. So there's two packages on here that are. This is one we want. So there's two different packages on npm for Bcrypt. So you can see there's Bcrypt and then there's Bcryptjs. And what we're going to be using is just the Bcrypt library. So yeah, okay. So you'll be using the Bcrypt package. Make sure you do that, not Bcryptjs. That's a separate, different package. But so yeah, npm I Bcrypt. That's gonna install. So we have that installed now. Let's see. Right? Okay, cool. So now that we have Bcrypt installed, we're going to just bring it in really quick. Right? Message. So up at the top, we will bring it in, const Bcrypt. Require Bcrypt. Now with Bcrypt, we have with hashing passwords, there's salt rounds. Salting a hash is not sure how to explain it very well, but salting, I think, if I remember correctly, basically salting is how many times it gets rehashed before it gets the final result, if I remember correctly. Instead of just hashing it once and using that, it's going to hash it multiple times, if I recall correctly. So anyways, so we need to make sure we set up our salt rounds. So I'm just going to do that right under bringing Bcrypt here. So we'll do const salt. And we'll just do something like 10. 10 is a pretty common one. Let's see. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we're back down in our register route. We can start writing that. So what we want to say first is we're going to so if we check that and make sure that the user isn't in existence, we can insert that user into this. So we need to hash our password. So we'll say bcrypt.hash, which is a function, and it's going to take our data as a first parameter, salt rounds as a second parameter, and callback as a third parameter. So a promise. Okay, so the password is stored in rec.body.password. What we want to do is just tack on the trim method for the string on there, just to make sure that any white space at the beginning or the end is taken care of beforehand. Do that, and then pass in the salt rounds. So that's just going to be passing in 10. And then finally, since this is a promise, we're going to .then it. and we should get a hashed password. That, which should be an arrow function, right? So let's just console.log the hashed password and see what we have. Alright, so back in Postman, we'll send the request over and we should see a hashed password down here in our terminal. All things work properly. And boom, okay, cool. So you can see this crazy jumbled string right here. That's a hashed password. Pretty cool, huh? I like it. Alright. Don't need to plug the. So now that we have our hashed password, what we need to do is essentially recreate our user object with the hashed password in it. So say instead of console.log, we'll say const new user, and this is what's going to be inserted into the database when we're all said and done with things. Const new user, and we'll have again first rec.body. First name. You can just duplicate that, swap out the first for last. Username. Have a user, oops. The class. And that's rec.body. And we need an email. That's going to be rec.body.email. And finally, our password. Password is going to be the hashed. Cool. So now we have our new user object. And we need to insert this into our database, right? All right, cool. So actually, before we do that, let's so since this is a promise, we need to handle in case something goes wrong. So we'll say dot catch. Basically, we're gonna do the same thing as what we did up here, kind of. It's gonna pass in dot catch. Function, and we will just say forward the error onto the sorry, I'm just looking at my code. We have a so we're gonna forward the error onto the error handler from when we have that built up. For now, what we'll probably do is we'll extract these different next functions out to kind of like its own function. So we don't have to write the same code over and over again. We can just call a function to send an error up to the main error handler. Don't worry about that right now. That's for another time. But it's kind of a foreshadowing of what might. So dot catch error next. Actually, we don't need this to be in its own body, like say. Cool, just like that. All right, and cool. Now that we have that finished, now we can finally take the next step and insert our new user into the database. But what we want to say is users.insert. Yep. All right, so users.insert, it's a function, and we're just going to pass in our new user. Just like that. And this is again a promise. So what we want to do quick is we're gonna send basically just send our info back to the client when we have the client up and going, so that it's like logging them in at the same time. We're gonna post their credentials and all the data to the database, and then we're gonna respond with that information. But in the during that process, what we're gonna do is just remove the password property so that it doesn't get sent, the hash doesn't get sent back to the client, because we don't want to send the hash back, because it can be, people get tons of hashes, they can reverse engineer it and basically crypto crack it and stuff. So we don't want to do that. So what we say is just not catch. So users.insert new user dot then pass in, let's call it added user. Function, and we'll just say delete dot password. So we that attribute from response. So what we're gonna do at this point is, since we're not gonna be doing the assigning our JSON Web Tokens tonight, we're gonna work on that the next episode. But for right now, what we can do just to kind of get that working is just res.json in here. Say user. So we'll pass that. We'll just res.json that back to the client when we have that going. And last but not least, we just need to write our last little catch here. So catch is just going to take the error, if any, and just pass that into the next. It's named the same here. Okay. Now, if we take that and send it over, we should see this populate in our database, and we should have a response in our console. Let's see what happens. Fingers crossed. Look at that. Oh, looks like we need to change it to insert one, but okay, cool. So what happened here? We got our post request incoming, and it did all its good stuff, and then we got sent it back with a status code of 200, and we have our first name, last name, username, user class, email, and the database ID. So it's in there, and it didn't send our password back, our hashed password back. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. So just to confirm that it is in there, we're going to come back into Robo T3T and just pull open our collection, and look at that. We have it in there, and it's got our first name, last name, username, class, email, and password with hashed password in. And Mongo automatically generates this ID at property automatically _ID. How we can target different things a lot more easier using the actual ID of the object. So cool. I think that's gonna do it. We should use user insert one. Insert is being created. Yes. Let's see, insert one. Let's see. It's probably gonna give me an error. I can it's entry fault though. So get that so we don't have errors, because it's gonna say, oh, look at. So let's send that over. Users.insert1 is not a function. I feel like I ran into this before. There isn't an insert one of Monk. It's just insert. So if we're using Monk, we can only use insert. Unless I'm missing something. So for now, we'll just do the insert, because that's what Monk is only allowing us to do. But if it needs to be, we could switch it out to just use the Mongo syntax, but I'll look into it. Anyways, okay, so let's see. Let's send that over. Boom, it's in there one more time, and just to check and make sure, give ourselves a refresh. is in fact there. Cool. Now if we try to register this again, we should get an error message saying user already exists. Boom, error. Username already exists. Please choose another. Boom, it works. Yeah, I think they'll have to update their code base. Maybe, I don't know if it's being maintained or not, but anyways. For now, that'll do it. We'll figure out a solution to that issue, the deprecation issue of insert. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this evening. I hope this has been super informative. We're kind of tripping up here and there a couple times, but you know what? It's all part of the learning process and learning how to work around and overcome those obstacles. It's how you become a better developer. So next week we'll be looking at, or next session we'll be looking at how to get our JSON Web Tokens signed and sent over to the front. And at that point I think we'll probably start working on a front end. Let's just get something just kind of started and go from there and see what happens. And then we got our login route. So it's coming along. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Live Coding with Rabbitwerks JavaScript. My name has been Sean. Make sure to go check out the GitHub if you want to read the code. I'm going to be pushing it exactly up, pushing it up to GitHub as soon as we're done here. If you have any questions, make sure to join, check out the Rabbitwerks Discord, get a hold of me there. It's the best way to get a hold of me. And yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think. Share it with your friends. I don't know, we just clicked over 300 subs, so thank you to everybody who's subbing and supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. Trying to really do this, do you guys justice, and do some awesome projects and give as much knowledge as possible. So many thanks. I do appreciate it. That's everything we need to do. So yeah, anyways, no matter where you are in the world, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful night. See you soon. My name is Sean, Rabbitwerks JavaScript out. Remember, wherever you are, no matter what you're doing, stay awesome and keep coding. Catch you next time. Peace.